Jack Mallers, the founder of Strike, who announced over the weekend that El Salvador would become the first sovereign nation to make Bitcoin legal tender. Over the last couple of days, that has developed further, with that becoming law overnight. So let's start there, Brett. What is the significance of this small country of El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as legal tender?
Well, before I answer that, I think as everyone knows, I'm a hodler with a multi-year view on Bitcoin, and I try to avoid short-term price, forecasts. But I think Anthony and John bailing on the weekly review means we've put in a bottom. Okay, so I want everyone to track the price. I'm saying, like, for those short-term traders amongst you, I think now's a good time to buy.
Jason Zinn's bottom, let's call it.
All right, then we'll call it that. Look, it's a super significant event for symbolic reasons, but beyond that, for very practical reasons. Bitcoin is now legal tender in a foreign country, and that has implications for U.S. commercial law. It has implications potentially for how it's accounted for on companies' balance sheets. So one thing that Michael Saylor is working on is he's trying to get FASB to change the tax treatment of Bitcoin on his balance sheet, because it's presently treated as an intangible. And so what that means is that if you own Bitcoin on a corporate balance sheet and it goes up, you don't mark it up. But if it goes below your cost basis, you mark it down. So it's asymmetrically bad. If you own a foreign currency, like a yen or euro or any foreign currency, you get mark-to-market accounting, okay? And just simply by El Salvador recognizing Bitcoin, it could have changed the accounting treatment of Bitcoin. But, beyond that, what we've seen since Sunday is leaders from nations throughout Central and South America saying they want to do likewise. We've seen a number of companies say they're going to be moving to El Salvador. And what's really happening is El Salvador is doing what Miami is doing and what Texas is doing, right? They are attracting, business, right, which is going to, ultimately benefit their economy. And so what's happening? Paraguay is responding, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, that's going to want this talent. And you mentioned this announcement was made in the Miami Bitcoin conference. And I've spoken to a lot of people who are down there. And, it is a bit of a Bitcoin Burning Man. There's a lot of partying that goes on. But just the amount of talent and capital that is pouring into the Bitcoin ecosystem is human capital, and actually, financial capital is just really unbelievable. Just yesterday, we were discussing that, BlockFi is raising, I think, $500 million in a round led by Dan Loeb. We understand that SoftBank might be making a substantial investment as well. Everything that's happening in this space is just really accelerating. I guess, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I was watching it live actually from Central Park, and Jack Mallers very emotional about the announcement. The background there, for those that don't know, Jack has been down in El Salvador for the last number of months, living and working at what's called Bitcoin Beach, which is this small beach town in El Salvador that a number of years ago decided to fully adopt Bitcoin. And so through applications like Jack Mallers' Strike and others built on the Lightning Network, that community has been living and transacting exclusively with Bitcoin. And it seems clear that the president and others in El Salvador took notice, and it's likely that was a significant part of this move by El Salvador, is that sort of proof of concept, even at a small scale. So you've now seen a number of developments since then, both in the country as well as you mentioned, from other politicians throughout the region. So why don't we take a step back a little bit and Brett, maybe touch on why these countries are adopting Bitcoin, right? A lot of them are in similar situations where they don't control their own monetary policy. They're really pegged to the US dollar. And with all of the dollar printing and devaluation that's gone on, it's had a big negative impact on these countries. So why don't you touch on what the actual macroeconomic benefits are likely to be from this move?
I think, Jason, the story starts earlier than that, which is if you think about go back 100 years, 2/3 of the world is colonized by Western Europe, right? And then we have an independence movement, all of Africa. These are young nations everywhere. And as you said, they develop their own currencies, and almost uniformly, they failed at managing their own currencies. I mean, El Salvador has failed to such a degree, right, that they use the US dollar. That's the official currency in El Salvador. But what happens is that we've weaponized the dollar after 9/11, and I think we've taken it to a large extent that is not serving US interests. So as an example, the El Salvador president, who's now become my favorite green pro-Bitcoin dictator, he was elected democratically, but he has demonstrated some autocratic tendencies. He fired the attorney general. He cleaned out some Supreme Court justices. And so the U.S. was moving to hold back some IMF money that El Salvador needed. These countries feel like they're economic colonies now, even if they're no longer political colonies, okay? There's just a culture, right, where they don't want to be controlled by any empire. It's not just the U.S. And so the idea of a money, right, that can't be screwed up by a government and isn't controlled by a foreign nation, right, is incredibly intuitive, appealing to these people. I think, as we've discussed previously, the first country to really embrace Bitcoin, and there was a fintech executive named Wences Casares, who's considered to be patient zero, who brought Bitcoin to Silicon Valley, and people like Chamath and Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman credit him with introducing them to Bitcoin. He lived through, and many Argentinians have, every decade their net worth just goes away, right? Because the currency collapses. So Bitcoin doesn't seem risky when owning your country's currency seems like, a 90, 100% chance that it's going to get completely destroyed. So I think, staying with the geopolitical theme, this is a domino, right? I think you're going to see this happen throughout South America and Central America, throughout Africa, the Caribbean nations, parts of Southeast Asia. And look, I think it's super exciting for Bitcoin. I think I might have mentioned this on a prior Bitcoin review show, but at the MicroStrategy conference, when Ross Stevens and Michael Saylor were speaking, Michael Saylor asked, what's the next chapter for Bitcoin? And Ross said, well, the first decade was Bitcoin the asset. Okay, I would argue that we're still in the very beginning of Bitcoin the asset, but that notwithstanding, Ross has been around Bitcoin longer than I have. And the next chapter is Bitcoin the network. Okay, and I think this is a movement there. And just last point on this, 22% of El Salvador's economy is remittances. The remittance market is huge. And everyone talks about all the fancy things that Ethereum can do. And I don't really like the Ethereum versus Bitcoin battle, because I don't think it's an either or. I think what Bitcoin does, it does great and doesn't have to do a gazillion different things. But this is another thing that Bitcoin can do, as aside from being a store of value, is play a very key role in the remittance market, which is an enormous market across the globe. So, again, I think this is really significant news. I think for many people who have called for this, the whole idea of a Bitcoin standard, I think it's happening, sooner rather than people expected. And we'll just have to see, is this an anomaly, or does this really result in follow through from other nations?